So Module 5, Part 2. So we're wrapping this up here, rounding out your tools. We're talking about experiential learning. And any time that we can set students up for an authentic real-world experience of experiential learning, I encourage my teachers to go for it. Because, and here's the trade-off, okay? With anything, there's a trade-off. If this book, for example, was a balance board, okay? There's 3 points on it: economy, reliability, authenticity. I'm going to go authenticity and reliability over economy most of the time, because you guys heard me say this before: teach less better. That's my philosophy. That's what I want to get to. So I want to make this authentic as I can, as often as I can. And let me throw in, because I showed you the 4-step model to Cobb's theory as opposed to the articles 2 and 2, let me throw in Bernheide's corollary to Cobb's theory of experiential learning. I think you could almost move the steps around in different order. Okay? Now, I haven't done anything with this, but bear with me. This is what I did with my 8th graders. Because I wanted to teach the Civil War in a little more in-depth manner. Okay? For those of you that are familiar with 8th grade American history in Kansas, I spent 9 weeks on it. Okay? I'm a Civil War junkie. I love sharing it with kids, and I think it's the pivotal moment of the 19th century for American history, if not beyond. Reference what's happening right now. Okay? The thing that I want to get into is I wanted to show kids why the Civil War was such a bloody affair. It was common for a Civil War battle to have a casualty rate between 30 and 40%. If that would happen today, there would be people fired, there would be people dishonorably discharged. I mean, it would be a tragedy. That happened over 40 times in the American Civil War, and involving the big armies, not skirmishes, but the big armies. Okay? We could take some pictures that Matthew Brady took, and yeah, probably some of them were doctored, but we got numerous reports and primary sources of where it happened on the battlefield, that people died in rows. Why? Well, and I posit that to the kids. I said, would you be willing to do this? I show them the clip from the Ken Burns Civil War series where the great author Shelby Foote uh, says, I don't know how they could do that. I'm afraid I'd have to go. Marsh Robert, I'm not going. And I'm the same way, because I look at this in movies, I look at this in the primary sources I read, I look at this in the books I read. It makes no sense. Why would you do that? But that's the way they fought. And so I explain to kids, and this is their initial concrete experience. I give them primary source, I show them the Shelby Foote clip, show them a clip from Gettysburg or Glory, how they just marched straight forward into battle. And then I ask them, why did they do that? And we start talking about it, and I draw lines up on the board, and I go through it, and I say, the reason why is they were using old books to explain how it was done. And I should have went to my garage library and pulled this book out. I've got a copy of Hardy's Tactics, which was the book given out to all these citizen soldiers at the start of the Civil War, explaining this is how you fight in the Civil War. You line up in lines, you march until you get in charge range, you run through with a bayonet. Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain from the movie Gettysburg, he gets put in charge of the 20th Maine right before, and you can see he's reading the little book throughout the movie, or at least in the early part of the movie. They were fighting with Napoleonic tactics from the 1800s. And Hardy said, this is how you fight. Well, it makes sense if the weapons have an accuracy of 80 yards. That means you can probably take 2 rounds if you're going in at a steady walking march before you charge. And those were inaccurate as all get up. So I provide all this data for the kids to crunch. I have them come up with ideas, and then I share with them the last piece of the data. The guns in the Civil War, once they developed rifling on the inside of the barrel that caused the bullet, the projectile to fly forward, it quintupled the lethal range from 80 yards to 400 yards. And so they were getting mowed down in swaths, and it improved the accuracy completely. And so after they start crunching this, they start going, that doesn't make sense. Then we come to the active experimentation part. Each kid takes 3 paper wads. I have a yardstick, which is my general sword. I line them up in lines across the room. I say we're going to do the Civil War style with controlled fire so that we can mass as much lead as we can. And I say, go to one side. I say, ready, aim, wait just a second. You need to use your non-dominant hand because we're using guns without rifling in the early 1800s. And folks, you have not lived until you've seen the stud quarterback that would go, as an 8th grader, that would go on to play a defensive back at K-State for the football team. Try and throw with his non-dominant hand when he wasn't expecting it to. Paper wads don't hit anything. I march one side closer, ready, aim, fire, ready, aim, fire. We get finally close enough, and we're right here. Grab 3 paper wads, line back up. 1861, now use your dominant hand. Ready, aim, fire. Ready, aim, fire. We're hitting much further apart. I tried to make it as realistic as I could, to give them an experience, to have them understand why technology outpaced tactics. And so I encourage you to do the same thing. If you're working on trigonometric functions, pretend that they're bridge builders and they have to figure out how the arc would work. Provide opportunities to explore. I don't want to get too nerdy on you here, and these aren't even the right ones to use, but hey, it was July 4th yesterday. These are little miniature redcoat soldiers. And I've got about 20 of these guys. Yes, I hand painted them. I've actually got, for the Civil War, 1,000 guys. We war gamed Gettysburg, and it was a blast. It was the celebration to the end of our unit. And on the Saturday before, we watched the movie Gettysburg. It was optional. Any kid that could come in, they got to sit and watch with my commentary. And I had the director's cut with an extra 47 seconds in it that was not shown in the theatrical release. That's my nerd voice there. And we had some fun. Kids brought in beverages, brought in snacks. I cleaned out my room of all the desks. Kids brought in lawn chairs, beanbag chairs. It was great. And I was teaching at a small school where I could get away with it. They show up next Monday. There's an 8x4 piece of plywood in the back with a green surface over the top of it with all of these 1,000 little soldiers lined up. And we refight the second day of Gettysburg that they saw in the movie that had my commentary with it. And my idea was not to teach tactics, but it was to make the war come alive for them. This is what it would look like if we had a helicopter back at the time. This is where the movements were. Here was Little Round Top. That's what the goal should be to take on the second day. And I've got some flack from people originally who said, why are you gaming war, one of the worst activities man has? I have to stop and explain my methodology. because it works out just right every time. The first casualties of the battle occur at the end of the first day, just by rolling dice, just by how things work out. And I stop, get everyone's attention. I pick up the casualties and I set them in a box all by themselves. And I say, kids, we're done for today, because I want you to think that's 200 people not coming home, not going to see their families, and their lives of everyone involved are tragically changed. And to remember that, we're going to sit in silence the last 5 minutes of class. It alters the game, because kids that were originally talking trash, saying, oh, my guy's going to wipe your guys out, generally they had Y chromosomes. They wind up the majority of the time trying to protect their soldiers, which becomes a fascinating study all of its own. Make life come alive for kids. Put it into as real world situations as you can. And use experiential learning. On the checklist it says, your project for this module is described in the video. Here's your project. Send me an email saying Module 5 done. That's it. You'll get full credit for it. I'll be right back in a second in my world, but you'll see it differently in yours with Module 6.